In May of 1960, the Zooliner made her first trip on the new track to Washington Park Rose Garden Station. This was a test run. The Zooliner had been running on a shorter track within the zoo grounds since June of 1958. In fact, it was running for a year before the grand opening of the zoo. The fares collected from the riders was revenue used to build the zoo, which opened July 1st, 1959. The Zooliner was preceded that day by an escort, the Casey Pioneer, which had been used to carry equipment and materials as the track was built, and was used for shakedown runs on the new track to carefully compact the ballast. It was an important day. On board, in the open-air, sky-dome coaches of the Zooliner, were railway experts and a few city officials who got their first glimpse of the scenic route. The route was cut into the wooded hillside, and the first stretch was straight, over 1,000 feet, which gave the illusion that the track disappeared in the distance. The canyon known as Texas Gulch came next, and then the S-curves that enabled passengers to view the locomotive from the passenger coaches. The ride was designed to be scenic and to enchant the passengers into feeling they were in the midst of the Cascade Mountains. When they got to the Rose Garden Station, the whole of the city was spread out before the honorable passengers. After a few minutes enjoying the scene, the Zooliner circled a small loop of track back to the main line and returned to the zoo station. Mission accomplished. The next day, the Oregonian reported that the trains rolled smoothly over the new line, surveyed, constructed, and ballasted with loving care by professional railroaders who spent many a postman's holiday helping the city and the Portland Zoological Society construct the longest railway of its kind in the country. Everyone was delighted with the new route. The Portland Zoo Railway was slightly longer than the Disneyland Railroad, which gave the Portland Zoo directors bragging rights. Walt Disney himself did not seem to mind, and he accepted an honorary position on the Portland Railroad Board and sent the Portland Zoo Board member passes for the Disneyland Railroad. The origin of the zoo came about in the spring of 1951 when the City Club of Portland recommended that a new zoo be constructed in Washington Park. The land they selected was occupied by a golf course set on a wooded hillside near Portland's western city limits. A dozen leading Seattle and Portland executives of Pacific Northwest Railroads provided advice and assistance to build the railroad. The chief architect of the new zoo was H. Abbott Lawrence of Lawrence, Tucker, and Wallman. The route was surveyed by engineers of the Southern Pacific Railroad, and the grade was engineered by the staff of the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle Railroad, now BNSF. Because railroads cannot negotiate grades steeper than 4%, the railroad route, with its station, tunnel, viaducts, and grade, was drawn first, and the enclosures for the animals were arranged on the remaining space. The new zoo commissioner wrote in 1955, quote, "Every zoo that has a railway, all are making money on them." In the correspondence files of the architect, there are numerous letters that demonstrate that Lawrence was seeking the best examples of an integrated zoo and railway design. Lawrence and his team met many leading zoo directors and curators. Lawrence and his partner visited 12 of the nation's finest zoos. Children were asked what type of train they wanted, and a design contest was conducted to determine what type of train should be built. In 1956, Jerry Hirschberger of H. Hirschberger Sheet Metal Company and his father, Waldo, saw the futuristic aerotrain at a conference and decided to enter the contest with the aerotrain design. The rocket-like train fulfilled the children's request, and the Hirschbergers won the contest. The Northwest Marine Ironworks and H. Hirschberger Sheet Metal Company both agreed to do the work on the new train at their cost, quote, "with no profit to them whatsoever," unquote. On June 5th, 1958, the Zooliner carried its first paying passengers. Before the train opened for the public, the Rose Festival princesses were treated to a ride on the shiny new train. The day it opened, the Zooliner carried 2,606 passengers. By the end of summer, approximately 200,000 fare-paying passengers had ridden the train. This was a year before the zoo even opened. But the revenue collected from the riders was, as planned, used to build the zoo. A new steam engine called the Oregon was added during the Oregon Bicentennial celebration, also built with mostly volunteer labor. The live steam locomotive hauled passengers at the new zoo for the first time on January 3rd, 1959. A contractor furnished the bulldozers and equipment at no cost, and other portions of the work were donated too. The Daily Journal of Commerce published a weekly feature titled Materials Wanted for Zooliner, which was a list of services, equipment, and materials needed for the project. And the next week, they gave credit to those who, the last week, made donations for the zoo. On Gandhi Dancer Day, track crews from all the major railroads came together to lay track, most of which was laid in one day. Coffee was served by the Railway Business Women's Club. Of course, the kids got involved. Some of the money for the Washington Park line came from a fund campaign that sold stock in the train for $1 a share, worth 2 free rides on the train when the extension was complete. On January 30th, 1960, the Washington Park extension to the Rose Garden was completed and a golden spike ceremony was held. In 1960, the railroad carried 250,000 passengers. Gross receipts were $80,209. In 1961, the number increased, and in 1962 and 63, the railroad carried approximately 600,000 passengers each year. In 1962, the railroad grossed $125,000 for the zoo, which provided funding to build an animal health and research center that opened in the spring of 1963. The strategy of the builders that the fairs would provide funding not only to build and sustain the railroad, but to build the zoo itself was realized. During the summer, there were music festivals and plays that took place at the amphitheater in Washington Park. The trains transported audience members from the zoo, which has a large parking lot, to Washington Park and back after performances. These performances included the Oregon Symphony, the Portland Symphonic Band, a ballet by the Ballet Workshop, various plays and operas, all for the fare of $1 to the show and 50 cents on the return. According to Zoo Beat, the bi-monthly publication for Friends of the Washington Park Zoo, quote, most years this railroad runs at a considerable profit, generating revenue for other zoo programs. During the last fiscal year, 1992, the Zoo Railway netted $134,000 on total revenues of just under $500,000. Singer Jimmie Rodgers and his wife and daughter bought the first ticket for the completed Washington Park route. The trains have had other famous riders. In 1959, during then-Senator John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign, he took a ride on the steamer Oregon at the Oregon Centennial Exposition. In May of 1968, while campaigning for president, both Senators Eugene McCarthy and Robert Kennedy rode from Washington Park to the zoo in the Zooliner and back. Kennedy was accompanied by his wife Ethel and astronaut John Glenn. In 1976, when candidate Jimmy Carter was running for president, the Carters, including their 8-year-old daughter Amy, rode the train to the Elephant House. In 2013, part of the Zoo Loop track was removed to make room for expanded elephant and polar bear exhibits, and the Washington Park route was discontinued. The original plan, approved with money from the 2000 and 8 construction bond with Metro that funded the new exhibits called for the Washington Park line to return. That promise was never fulfilled. The current short loop was to be only used for zoo lights or winter operations. Now that is all that is running. The end.